Well, joining us now, STV's climate correspondent Laura Piper, climate change activist Laura Young and Leo Cerdo from Ecuador. Thank you all very much indeed for joining us. So, Leo, you're from the Sereno community and you live in the Amazon rainforest. You've seen climate change at first hand. You're on the front line. What are you seeing?
Indigenous communities have to bear with the consequences of climate change firsthand. The weather patterns in our communities have changed. We have more floods, the crops don't grow in the right seasons. So that is food sovereignty for us, that is our livelihoods. And also we have fossil fuel contamination from like oil exploration in the Amazon that also affects our livelihoods because our water is polluted, now the weather is changing, so we are the first one directly affected.
And Laura Piper, one of the sticking points in the agreement is financial help for those communities and countries, like Leo's, really on the front line of climate change.
Yes, and this has been a problem throughout pretty much all the COPs up until this point, and that's really what's at stake here. That's what we really want to see coming through over the next 24 hours, because when you are on the front line, you really need that vital funding to get adaptation plans in place, or the impacts are really, truly deadly.
So the negotiations are ongoing, and COP's supposed to finish at 6 o'clock tomorrow. What's the atmosphere like? What were you picking up when you were over there today? They must be under so much pressure.
They're exhausted, and the pressure's very much on. You could feel that change today. The COP president, Alok Sharma, he was very much pushing for a spirit of cooperation. I mean, at the end of the day, there's 200 odd countries around the same table in one agreement, and you need to get them all to agree to that one big major plan. That is a significant challenge. At the moment there's rumblings, it might not be tomorrow. This could stretch into the weekend.
So are you saying that if someone at the last minute refuses to sign, that they're almost back to square one?
Well, there could be something in there that they're not completely ready to sign off on, and we're not back to square one necessarily, but that will stretch talks out, yes.
Yes, so it's a huge job ahead of them. Laura Young, you've been in the blue zone for the last 2 weeks. What did you make of the draft deal that was issued yesterday? And another draft is going to come out tomorrow. Do you fear it might be watered down? I mean, what are your feelings about it?
I think I do, and the one thing that we know is it's not what we need, and that means it's just not good enough. When we talk about what we need, whether it's climate finance or sticking to 1.5, anything that doesn't meet that is not good enough, and we know that because there's communities around the world being impacted right now at 1.1, 1.2 degrees, let alone 1.5 or beyond. And there's also communities who are fighting on the front lines who need the financial support and they don't have it. And so any draft, well, the draft that we saw, it's not good enough. It's not made it to where we need it to be. And so I hope they do go back and fix it and take it to where we need it.
So you're hoping that yesterday was the floor rather than the ceiling. You hope they're going to go, are you confident they're going to go further? Because today the mood music, Alok Sharma, did not sound particularly confident.
I hope that they take it much higher. The bar is on the floor, if I'm honest, and we need to be bringing it up, and it's because it's lives at stake. I think Mia Motley was on the piece just there, the Prime Minister of Barbados, and she was talking about it's a cost in lives. That's what we're looking at. And I think there are lots of demands inside the Blue Zone, inside the hub of COP26 for this, and we need to keep pushing for it. Even Nicola Sturgeon from Scotland, as an example, came out with more finance today. So we are seeing little steps, but we need to be running and leaping rather than this pace we're at.
Leo, what do you think will be absolutely crucial to have in the final agreement?
Article 6, where Indigenous communities are front and center of these decisions, because Indigenous communities need to consent on all climate policies. That because we are the ones who are coming up with the solutions, and the solutions have to be nature-centered, but also Indigenous rights-centered. And we need to accomplish that bar and set it high, because we need to say on the final agreement that we don't want any more financing to fossil fuel industry and gas industry. We need to divest from that and invest in real solutions, not fake solutions or false solutions, like what we call it in our communities.
Yeah, and Laura Piper, cutting carbon emissions by half by 2030. This is really crucial in limiting global warming to 1.5, keeping 1.5 alive is the mantra that they're talking about. I mean, it's crucial, isn't it?
I mean, as we've seen tonight and heard tonight, at the moment, we're facing those severe impacts So we really need to get there. But we've even in this week heard a report that those current promises to hit by 2030 might not necessarily even be enough. So as we said, those ambitions need to be raised, and we're really just hoping now that by tomorrow we'll see a stronger draft come out that will take us there.
Do you think 1.5 is still alive?
It has to be. It has to be, because there's people in there whose countries might not exist if 1.5 isn't kept alive, and that's why we have to keep saying it. And it's a privileged position to say that it's not alive and we've maybe missed it. We need to all be working towards it, and that's the most important thing, and that's why we keep saying it. And I hope no one gets bored of saying it, because that is the most important thing.
But are they not already kind of suggesting, Leo, that this agreement may be more of a roadmap towards more talks next year rather than a kind of a final agreement?
We need less talk, more action. That's what we're demanding. And we need to make sure our governments listen. But also people in the front lines, we know that inside there, they're making decisions that are going to be directly impacting people, but also outside, the civil society movement is stronger, and we're making change. And the change is also coming from us. And we just need to demand real solutions to this climate crisis, and said about 1.5, that's the limit. And we don't want nothing besides that. And how are you going to do it? And how are you going to directly invest in positive change and change now? We don't need to look at 2030, maybe act now, because one of the main demands for us, frontline communities, is that we should reduce emissions by 2005 levels by 50%, and we should demand that to all corporations and governments, and that should be at the top of our priority list.
Have young people been represented enough? There seems to be a bit of a disconnect between what goes on in the blue zone and the protests outside, Laura.
There definitely aren't enough young people inside the blue zone in the official spaces, and there's a lot of weight on the younger people who are in there to really represent the world of young people. However, the messages of young people are definitely getting in. We saw that across the weekend with lots of marches and demonstrations, and people know what they were saying and people were hearing it, and that is really what's putting this into the media. That's what's keeping this conversation going, and I just hope we learn from this to include them more, because they also just know how to say it right.
And do you think the Indigenous people have been listened to enough in these negotiations?
Not enough. We need to consent to all climate policies, and we need to be in the room where the decisions are being taken, and we need more representation. It is hard enough for us to come all the way from our communities in the Amazon to be conflicted within the organizational stuff. We need to have our voices inside there, in the room where the things are. Our future depends on this. Our lives depends on this. Nature depends on this. So we need to be at the negotiation table and demanding the mechanisms for Article 6, the reduction of emissions, and to act now, which is basically and the solutions have to be intersectional. There's no climate change without racial justice, or there is no racial justice without climate justice, and we just need to know that. And because all those issues go hand in hand, and the communities that have to bear with the consequences are us who are in the front lines.
Were you at all heartened when China and America issued this joint statement yesterday saying that they were going to cooperate going forward? That seemed like quite a big moment, Laura.
Looking back, we might not have expected to see any sort of joint anything from China and the US. So the fact that it's there is a good thing, but it's not enough. It's not enough. And actually inside it, there's nothing majorly new other than a partnership. So we need to keep pushing further what they are going to do. And I hope that in the next few years they do that.
And so when do you think we might see an agreement? I know that's a very difficult question, but security have been alerted and catering have been alerted, haven't they? That they may have to stay till Sunday. So that seems to suggest...
That's what we've heard. We've heard it could run into the weekend. People are on standby. They're really pushing, though. I mean, Alok Sharma tonight has called for a crucial meeting, particularly on finance, to push that
and you'll
through.
Be on standby too. Thank you all very much indeed for joining us. And that's all from Scotland Tonight. Thanks for watching. John will be here on Monday. Until then, good night.